But back to that weird British election. I mean, a huge win for Labor, but with a huge danger. First, Labor hasn't been in government for 14 years now, and I got to say, some of its new ministers don't seem match fit. Here's the new Foreign Secretary, back when he was a contestant on Celebrity Mastermind. Now, true, this was a decade ago, but I've got to say, his ignorance of foreign matters and even British history was astonishing.
What was the married name of the scientists Marie and Pierre who won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1903 for their research into radiation?
Antoinette.
Curie. Which fortress was built in the 1370s to defend one of the gates of Paris and was later used as a state prison by Cardinal Richelieu?
Versailles.
The Bastille. Who acceded to the English throne at the age of 9 on the death of his father Henry VIII in 1547?
Henry VII.
Edward VI. Which country's so-called Rose Revolution of 2003 led to the resignation of its president, Edward Shevardnadze?
Yugoslavia.
No, it was Georgia.
But more important is that this is a Labor government under a new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, that was voted in by only 20% of British voters. That's because only 60% of voters even bothered to cast a vote for anyone. And of those who did, just 34% voted Labor. Yet it's still got 2/3 of the seats under Britain's first-past-the-post system. And that's because the Conservative vote was this time split between the Conservative Party and the new anti-immigration reform party of Nigel Farage, who got 14% of the vote, but just 5 seats. So this Labor government has got huge political power, but very little public support or love. Joining me from London is writer, broadcaster and columnist Esther Krakue. Esther, great to see you. This is a very left-wing government under a Prime Minister who just wants to manage. I don't think he's a wild ideologue himself, but do his MPs actually know the public didn't really vote for them, but they voted against the Conservative government?
I think Keir Starmer is very aware that his majority and his win is built on quicksand. So if you actually look at the statistics behind this election, they're quite devastating for Keir Starmer, and it's quite, I suspect, frustrating for him to know that his own personal popularity is so low. I mean, this is a government that was elected with fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn won in 2017 and 2019. So really, the real story here is not that the Labour Party won, but the Tories lost. I mean, the Tory vote just collapsed. Reform came second in 98 Labour-held constituencies. And that's just to demonstrate the scale of which the Tories just completely fell off the map. They've lost, the post-Brexit coalition has completely imploded. And the Labour Party knows this. I mean, the Labour Party is effectively trying to vie for the same territory that the Tories are. And this is what's presenting a huge opportunity for reform. For a new party, which is basically 4 years old, to win 4 million votes on its first try, it is quite incredible. They won more votes than the Liberal Democrats, but the Liberal Democrats won 72 seats and Reform won 5. So, of course, calls for electoral reform are going to intensify. But the bigger question is what's going to happen in 2029, because there's a huge opportunity for reform here. If the Tories don't get their act together, which I suspect they won't, if Labour don't do very well and become very unpopular very quickly, which many of us are suspecting, there's a real chance for reform here to completely shift the political map here in Britain.
I think you could be right. Under this crazy voting system, they might get a tidal wave of support too, provided they get the right candidates. Quickly to France, though. It held its second round of voting for its national parliament. The anti-immigration right, the national rally of Marine Le Pen, was tipped to have a really good chance of winning, but it came third. The leftist parties, communists, socialists, a ragbag of parties, buried their differences for a sec, united as the new Popular Front, and came first, with President Macron's party second. And some of the left celebrated their win in the leftist way by burning stuff, smashing, looting, shooting fireworks at police. The thing is, Esther, not one of those 3 parties got enough to form a majority, and that left-wing new Popular Front wants to kill off Macron's economic reforms, lower the voting age, and so on. France could never afford it, and yet people voted for this. What's going on there?
Yeah, so now France is looking at a hung parliament, and we've seen the leader of sort of the left-wing coalition basically declare that the left has won and that he should be made prime minister. And if you're seeing a lot, the violence you're seeing on the streets of many French cities are actually coming from left-wing activists. Now, imagine if this was the right, and the right decided to protest in this way, they would treat it as the second coming of
Oh,
Nazi Germany. So it's interesting how the dialogue is going on there. But the real issue here, again, and France is facing its own electoral problems like the UK, is the nature of the electoral system. It really, particularly in the second rounds, it has a way of perversing the popular vote. So what happened is many of the left wing and centrist parties pulled out their third place candidates from over 200 constituencies in France in order not to split the votes, to have a stronger sort of opposition to Marine Le Pen's party. Now, I think that's perverse. I don't think you should be able to do that. I don't think you should be able to manipulate the electoral system in such a way. But the biggest loser of this clearly is Macron, who is now probably going to keep his prime minister in place as a caretaker prime minister while negotiations are underway, probably well after the Olympics. So it's certainly not an ideal situation. But clearly, what people are trying to ignore, that they can't ignore, is France, like the UK, like many countries in Europe, are lurching to the right because the people that are governing them are simply not listening.
another case of the government not representing the voters, I would have thought. And I have to say, the party that came first is comprised of parties that can't agree with each other. So I don't know where that's going to go. The Olympics coming up, big security issues. My goodness. Esther Krakue, thank you so much for your time.